What's going on, everybody? One of the things that I am going to continue to monitor are the grading companies. When anything comes out, when there's new information, when there's speculation, but especially when the companies come out with something that's a big deal, I'm going to do my best to share that with you. Because at this point, in my opinion, cards and grading are so intertwined, there's just no way around it. Card grading and the success of card grading and the failure of card grading and the issue with card grading affects the hobby as we know it. Recently, on October 10th, so very recently, PSA came out and they posted a message on Instagram. And it was about a 40-minute video. Now, I'm not super active on Instagram. I have Instagram, but I more watch other things on Instagram, and I kind of stay up to date on stuff on Instagram, but I don't personally post a lot. So when PSA posts a 40-minute video, I'm going to be interested. So there were some takeaways from this video. There were a couple of takeaways that I think are really, really good things. Throughout this video, you're going to hear PSA continue to say to improve transparency, because transparency is important to us. What that means when they say that is that they're listening. And the biggest complaint recently from collectors has been the lack of transparency from PSA. And as a result, some people are losing trust in PSA. So the fact that they're saying repeatedly, and I'm going to show you some clips from the video itself. I'm not going to put words in their mouth. I am going to share their words with you. You're going to hear them continue to say that. And again, that's good news. The reason it's good news is because it's an example that they're actually reading comments, they are hearing feedback, and they are acknowledging that some of the negative things are areas they need to improve. So here's a quick little share of the introduction to the video that they did on October 10th. I'm going to continue to be stopping and showing you other clips as we move forward and kind of giving you my take on the clips that I'm showing you. All right, so let's go ahead, take a look at the intro first.
I'm Ryan Green. I'm incredibly excited to welcome PSA President Ryan Hogue to our studio. Thank you for taking part in the Q&A today. You know, we have a growing focus here on transparency, and we thought what better way to celebrate 10-10 Day on the calendar by having you here with us to speak directly and answer questions from some PSA customers and our followers.
Love it. We got the Ryan Show on 10-10.
All right, so right there, they acknowledge to us, hey, we're improving transparency. That's a priority to us. So we're bringing the president of the company directly to you, our collectors and our Instagram followers, to answer your questions. I think this is a really good sign. The reason it's a good sign is because, again, they're acknowledging that they've heard the complaints and they want to do something about it. That is good news. Now, people are going to say that I love PSA and I'm in bed with PSA. People are going to say I hate PSA and I'm in bed with SGC or one of the other companies. Let me remind you, I have cards in my collection graded by 4 or 5 companies. I think 5 companies. I have most of my collection in PSA, but I have a lot of my collection in SGC. I have sent in submissions to SGC. I have sent in submissions to PSA. I anticipate sending submissions to both companies moving forward, and I'm open to other companies. I just feel like it is important that we keep monitoring this and we continue to keep their feet at the fire. Because by keeping these companies' feet at the fire, they're going to improve. They're telling us right here, they're paying attention to the things that people are saying, to the things that are out there. Now, I don't work for PSA, but I can tell you this. If I worked for PSA, and quite frankly, they should probably hire me. They should probably hire me to work for them because, in my opinion, though they're going to say a lot of good things that I'm going to share, and they're going to say a couple of things that are concerning for me, the way you show transparency is you don't have your own employee interview the president of the company with pre-screened questions. You don't ask a few days before, submit your question, and then they pick their questions that they want to answer and they're prepared to answer. That's not transparency. Throughout the video, there are a couple of times where another person is following the chat in the Instagram Live, and he barks out a couple of questions that they answer as well. Now, again, this is like a 40-minute video. I'm condensing it. I'm sharing the highlights, and I'm giving you my opinion on the highlights. But that's not transparency. Transparency is going on an independent channel, like mine or like another one, and answering questions that they don't know are coming. That's transparency. This is better than nothing, but it's not what it could or should be. I think they need to get out there more, talk to independent people, and not have pre-screened questions. Let's look at the first highlight that I think there's something that is said. You might not catch it right off the bat, but there's something that is said that I think is really, really important. And again, there are a couple of things in this video that I think are good. Their willingness to become transparent and address that is good. But I also think there are a couple of bad things. Toward the end is probably the best news out of this video. But let's look at the first question that I want to take a look at.
So this question's a little bit touchy as a subject, but in an effort for some more transparency here, this one came from OG's Sports Cards here on IG. If a card is graded by PSA, the owner cracks it out and repairs the card in some form and resubmits it, can the grade bump? How does how is this looked at internally? This isn't something we speak about very often.
Yeah, this one's got a lot of nuance to it, so I'll probably spend some time answering this one. So, first off, if you crack and resubmit a card, there is no hard and fast rule that you're going to get the same grade. So you could get a higher grade, you could get a lower grade. A different grader is going to likely be looking at that card the next time it comes through.
Seriously? He just said it could get a higher grade, it could get a lower grade, but it's likely that a different grader will be grading it the next time it comes through. These are their words, okay? Now, let me tell you how that comment makes me feel as a collector. Say a card gets an 8, and I crack it and send it back in. The president of the company just said, yeah, it's totally possible it gets a 9 next time, and it's totally possible it gets a 7 next time, because a different grader might be grading it. That's what the president of the company just said. Now, I appreciate the transparency. I appreciate the willingness to come on and ask questions. He clearly knew this question was coming. I mean, he didn't even act like he didn't know this question was coming. It was pre-screened. It was read to him by his fellow employee. He knew it was coming, and his answer was, well, I mean, the grade could go up, the grade could go down because a different grader is probably going to be grading it. That is not what collectors want to hear. What collectors want to hear is, we have very, very strict grading standards, and we have aligned all of our graders to be on the same page. So if a card gets sent in 100 times, the chances are that 99 times it's going to get the same grade because our grading standards are so rigorous and we have such good training with our graders. But it is possible that a card might get a different grade because maybe something was kind of seen that wasn't there, or was kind of missed the first time it was graded. So it's possible that the grade might change. But more likely than not, time and time and time again, the grade would stay the same. That's what a collector wants to hear. The absolute last thing that I would want to hear is the grade could go up or the grade could go down because somebody different might be grading it. That's the last thing I want to hear. That gives me no confidence in consistency. And that's what the president said on this thing they admitted was a touchy question. And he was going to spend some time on it. And he obviously was prepared for it. And he said, well, the grade could go up, the grade could go down. Now, let's just keep in mind that if you send in a card, say it gets an 8. Let's just take a bigger type card. Let's take a Sandy Koufax rookie. Let's take a Bob Gibson second year. Let's take, it doesn't even matter if it's a big card or not. If it goes from an 8 to a 9, that is a huge difference in value. Imagine if it's a Jordan rookie and it goes from an 8 to a 9. That's like thousands of dollars. Or it goes from an 8 to a 7. So what the president of the company just told us is there's really a range of about 3 grades it could get. It could get the grade that it got. It could go up by 1 or it could go down by 1. So if it got an 8, it could get a 7, an 8, or a 9. If it got a 5, it could go down to a 4, but it could go up to a 6. So it could get a 4, a 5, or a 6. That's not what we want to hear. What we want to hear is time and time and time again, our standards are so tight. Our graders are so in sync. We're so consistent that almost always the card is going to get the same grade. But that's not what he said. Let's keep watching what he said from there.
One thing that we are doing, though, is we're imaging everything that we see now, pre and post grade. So if it's a serial numbered card, we will be able to compare those images and see.
We do track those. That is a common question.
We do track those. So we will have the images of the card. Yeah. So to the repair part of that question, that's the touchier one. People have asked me this about, like, there's certain folks that advertise on IG about, like, helping repair surfaces and remove scratches and things like that. Generally, surface like cleanup, if you're removing scratches or fingerprints with microfiber or whatever, that's generally okay. I think where you start having problems with getting it through our authentication and grading is when you are doing, I'll just describe it as heavier duty, kind of like restoration, whether that's like rebuilding corners or edges where it's clear there's chipping or something that's happening there and you were trying to like repair that, or obviously if you're cutting edges to make it sharper, more better appearance, that's the kind of stuff that is going to get flagged by our graders and not passed. But back to the question though about, like, can you get a higher grade? Sure, you could get a lower grade too. But if you disagreed with a grade, you can crack it and resubmit it. We also have a review service too. Yes. So if you don't want to take the chance of cracking it out, I've seen some people complain about some of our new holders. We're using a slightly different plastic now, so it gives better protection for the card, so it doesn't stick to the top of the holder. But it does create a little bit more gummier feel. So if you're trying to crack it out, it doesn't shatter like the old ones, and you might risk damaging that card. So you can always send things in for review. Similar to like a crossover, you send it in the holder, and you pay a fee and say, hey, take another look at this, and we have customers that do that from time to time as well. So that's available.
Very underrated service.
Yeah, no, it's popular with several folks, and again, it's humans doing the grading, and so we have our grading standards, but it's ultimately up to the grader on their assessment of each individual card on where it's going to fall.
It's up to each individual grader as to their assessment as to where it's going to fall. So I'm a teacher, right? I'm a teacher, and we have multiple people in my department where we teach the same assignments and we grade the same assignments. And what we have are very, very strict rubrics. So you get out a sheet, and if the student did this on the assignment versus this on the assignment, it's this many points versus this many points. It's standardized. Now, if somebody came to me and said, I feel like you're a really tough grader. I feel like you're grading my work too hard. What I would say is, well, here's the rubric. This is what the rubric looks like. This is exactly what this, the corner has, no super sharp, that has slight touch on corner, has slight rounding, has that corner gets this. If I'm grading an assignment for a student or I'm grading a card, there shouldn't be really any gray area. If there's gray area of where does it fall for that particular, grader, then your rubric isn't very good. It really needs to be lockstep. If a different teacher in my department, at my school, were to grade an assignment from a student, because our rubric and our grading standards are the same, I am very confident that this teacher would give the same grade as I would and as the next teacher would. If we all sat down and calibrated together, I think you'd see that the student would receive the same grade. What I would not tell a parent, what I would not tell the school board is, it's really up to each teacher. Like that teacher over there, they have a different threshold of what is an A for them, and mine's much lower than that. And, but Joe over there, Joe has a really high standard. So it just kind of depends on which teacher you have to determine which grade you get. If I'm in the PR department at PSA, which I'm starting to think I should be, at this point, I'm pulling the cord out of the wall and cutting the power to end this, because that was the first question. That was the first question. Now, again, I don't hate PSA. I want PSA to be successful. I have a lot of cards and holders from PSA. As I've said, I've sent in many cards to PSA. And ultimately, I want competition because competition drives innovation and quality. So I want them to be successful, just like I want many of these grading companies to be successful. But the answer to that question, from my perspective, did not go well. Let's look at some other highlights. And again, I'm not going to just sit here and bag on PSA. There are some positives from this. They have one thing that they announced that is great news. It's a great step in the right direction. And the fact that they're even sharing some of this from the president, I think is a step in the right direction. I just think maybe they should consider giving him some more talking points or something, because I don't think he answered that in the way that's going to make most of us comfortable. Let's keep watching.
Walshy75 in the chat has a pretty good question. What happened to the complete through dates updates?
Oh, okay, yeah. We had the complete through dates. For folks that don't remember, when we had a lot of service levels closed, and we were still working through the backlog that kind of grew in 2020 and 2021, we would have kind of complete through dates for all of the different service levels. Earlier this year, once we kind of opened back up all service levels, we removed that and have now replaced it with the estimated turnaround times. And on the turnaround time front, I get reports weekly on how we're doing, and we're consistently averaging about 98 to 99% of orders are shipping out at or below the estimated turnaround time. Now, I know some people, because I read all the messages and I'm very in tune with what's going on.
I see them every day.
On message boards, on Instagram, everything. People are commenting that we're slow. We slowed down. And yeah, I think at the beginning of the year we were going pretty fast. Like we were cranking through a lot of things that we were estimating 65 business days, which is roughly about 3 calendar months. I know some folks like miss that, but yeah, there's working days that we use because we don't work the weekends. If we're at the national, those don't count. Holidays like Labor Day, 4th of July, those are not working days. We were doing things in about half that time. So like we were shipping stuff back to people within like 40, 45 days. And so I think people got to, set
Really
that expectation.
that,
Now we're probably pushing closer to that 50 to 60 business day turnaround on the bulk and the value services. We're still under, but it's gotten a little bit longer than it was at the beginning of the year.
Okay. I think this was a pretty decent question and a pretty decent response. He's basically saying, yeah, we were turning things around faster than our turnaround time, and now we're kind of close to the actual turnaround time. And so it might feel like we've gotten slower, but part of the reason it feels like we've gotten slower is because we are slower, but we're still underneath what we've promised. He also provides clarification, which I personally don't think this is very clear. If you look at the website, when it says 65-day turnaround or whatever the turnaround time, it doesn't really say that it's business days. It doesn't really say that doesn't include the days when they're at the national. Like, how am I supposed to know that just because some of your employees are out of town, that's going to increase how long my turnaround is? That seems strange. Holidays, maybe I kind of understand, but that's fine if it's 65 business days, which doesn't include holidays, weekends, and whenever they're at the national or other shows. But I think that should be a little bit clearer on the website. But I do appreciate that clarification because to this point I had heard people say it was business days, but I've not really seen that super clear on PSA. So I'm okay with that answer. I don't really like that answer per se, but I'm okay with it because it did provide some clarification. So I thought that was a good one or a better one than the first one. Let's keep watching.
This is something we get asked about a lot, and as someone who looks at our social mentions and DMs every day, I'm never surprised, or I'm not surprised at all that we got questions about it today. But a lot of chatter in the hobby community is about whether PSA changes its grading standards as time goes. People, you'll see comments like PSA is being really tough lately if they got an order back where some grades were under where they expected, or is it, the term pop control comes up a lot. So here's a good chance to just address it head on, to really give the transparency as to what really happens in the grading room as far as that's concerned.
Yeah. No, this is good, and I'm happy to talk about it and try to quell some of the conspiracy theories. So the grading standards have not changed. There's always been a range of what's acceptable, and this is published on our website, and you can read what's a PSA 8, what's a PSA 9, what's a PSA 10. PSA 10 doesn't have to be perfectly centered. It can have 55, 45 centering, top, bottom, left, right on the front. What I think some people might see is, again, we're still human based, so it is up to the individual grader to interpret what they see. And some graders might have a slightly higher tolerance for within that range of what constitutes an 8 versus a 9.
Okay, stop saying that. He needs to stop saying that different graders have a different opinion on what constitutes an 8 or a 9. Like, your rubric isn't very good then, guys. You need to tighten it up, because it shouldn't really be debatable whether that corner is an 8 corner or a 9 corner. That you need more specific rubrics, because we can't keep saying that this grader might think it's this and a different grader might think it's this. At this point, it's time for some of the people in, the public relations department to maybe consider making some changes to future streams like this and answering questions in language that's used. Again, if I'm the public relations department, I say we're human-based. We absolutely use some software which helps us with things like centering and like tilt and things like that. But we're human-based, but we have very, very strict standards, and our graders have been through so much training and calibration that you can line up all of our graders in a room and show them the same card, and 99 times out of 100, they're going to give it the same grade. It's very unusual that somebody misses something or we're not on the same page. Very unusual. That's the answer. That's the answer. Not grader A and grader B might think that something falls at a different place within what is acceptable for an 8 versus a 9. That is not the right answer.
I think a lot of the chatter too that we'll see is on 10s, where people are expecting more 10s on new cards, and yeah, you would think that quality control is where it should be. Honestly, like some of these cards look pretty good coming out of the pack. There's oftentimes though a lot of surface issues. When I find that a customer is miffed a little bit about why did this grade something, it's usually something on the surface that they miss, and this counts for vintage too. Even if you look back on cards from the 70s or 80s, there could be spider veins or something that through the paper that maybe isn't apparent at first glance, and that automatically kind of takes it to a kind of a mid-tier grade, like a 4 or a 5 potentially, if it's got those types of surface issues. And so that's one I know customers might not see at first glance that that we end up seeing in the grading room, because our graders, they're in a dark room and they're under a halogen type light, and so they're looking at it from a few different angles, and when you don't have any other outside light, you can really put the spotlight on that thing, so more things are apparent in that grading room. So I would encourage people at home before they submit to actually simulate that kind of setup, and they might be able to see some of these flaws out there. But our graders also know that the way cards were manufactured in the 70s or 80s are different than how they're manufactured in 2023, and so that's taken into consideration too when they're looking at these, and what is normal for a mint 9 1980 tops compared to something today. So and we've got some folks in our grading room, like a decent percentage are trained on vintage. We have more of our graders trained on modern and TCG, and so folks kind of want to know, did somebody that doesn't know this grade it? No, we make sure that the things are routed to the right expertise in the right room. The other one about pop control, there is no pop control going on. This is a fun thing. There's a fun thing to look at. But I mean, look, if it's a big card though, like if you're submitting a 75 tops George Brett and you think you're going to get a 10, that card, we want to make sure it's really a 10. There is no conspiracy to suppress it for all the other 10 owners to preserve their value. We just want to make sure if we're going to 10 it, it's got to be great. It's got to be a great card. So, the big cards get looked at, closely, and we want to feel really confident with that grade. There is no, mindful population control. I would argue that, most of the graders have no idea what the population is on these things, but they know what a big card is and a meaningful card, and they want to make sure it's representative of the PSA standards. Oh,
good grief. there is no pop control, but he says there is no pop control, but if it's a big card, then yeah, we're going to give it a really close look. And our graders know what the big cards are. But there's no pop control. I'm speechless. Shouldn't every card go through the same process? Shouldn't every card get the same amount of time and the same amount of energy? Because if you're giving some cards a closer look, isn't that kind of by definition mean you're grading it harder? You're looking at it longer to get a better look at the card? And if you're looking at it longer and you're giving it a closer look, using his words, then isn't that a tougher grade? Again, I know I probably sound very negative right now, and I'm not enjoying the negativity of this. I really, really am not. But these are things that I hear, and they concern me. And I feel like it's important for others to hear what PSA, their own PR department, is putting out and what they're saying. I'm simply providing my feedback of what that means to me. Now, again, there's some good news out of this, and we're not done. The next highlight is a really, really good step in the right direction for PSA. It's really good news. And the fact that they're even doing this is good news, really. And the fact that they're checking the DMs on Instagram and they're checking the comments on Instagram, that's good news. And it's clearly they've heard the complaints about the lack of transparency as they're using that language a lot. There's a lot of good in here, but I don't want to know. I don't want to think. I can't believe the president of the company just admitted that different graders might grade a card differently, because that tells me that the grading standards and the rubrics aren't tight enough. And B, that the big cards, and the graders know what the big cards are, according to the president, are going to get a closer look, meaning more time, more energy, more effort, more likely to catch things, more likely to not give it a good grade. That really is pop control, isn't it? All right. The best news, the highlight of the video for PSA right now. Let's take a look at that.
Sticking with peeks behind the curtains, and we talked about the grading standards, and this is another one that we hear a lot about. Is I know on social we've definitely seen an uptick in questions about this. Customers want to know why my card graded an 8. Why did my card get this? If they were expecting a 10, why did it get a 9? Yeah. Is there anything in the pipeline regarding grading transparency for customers coming in the future?
Yeah, this one's really important. To my point about saying, hey, take a closer look at your thing before you submit it. Yeah. But even after, it would be kind of nice to know, well, why did this, get a 7?
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be a 9 or a 10 for sure.
And as customers, we've all had these moments.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm going to put pressure on our team. I'm just going to start pre-announcing some things. That's okay.
Okay. It's your world.
Yeah. So we have an idea for a feature that we want to roll out, where essentially we would show grader notes, and so we'll likely start this and have it available on some of the higher fee service tiers, just from a volume perspective, so that we can keep up with it. But I'd like to make it available to all. But you could imagine once you get your grades, you could see the view of the card and have maybe a highlighted region, and it could say, surface roller mark, and point to the exact spot on it. So we're designing the feature right now, but it's something that we want to have go live. It's not going to be this year, but I'm hoping early next year we can have this thing available, and that'll give more insight, because the graders are logging all of this now. We're just not exposing it to customers.
Yeah.
And so we want to have a nice, elegant solution that will work well and make sense for folks so that they can actually see, the notable flaw or two flaws on why something received a grade today.
Transparency matters. I like
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, that is great news. That is terrific news. That is way better than subgrades. When BGS has subgrades and they say, the surface is a 9, you're like, okay, or the surface is an 8. Well, what am I missing? What am I not seeing? But they're talking about specific grader notes, insight as to where the mistakes actually are, where the issues are on the card. Because if I think my card should get an 8, and I get it back and it has a 4, and I go, why in the heck did this get a 4? Well, and the reason it got a 4 is because there's a little wrinkle and I never saw it. But it's on the back top right-hand section of the card. Then letting me know that is going to make me way less upset. It's going to make me go, oh, I'm not mad at you anymore, PSA. I'm mad at myself that I missed that. That's a bummer. This is great news. And one of the reasons it's great news is if PSA starts doing this, it's going to force the competitors to do it too. So this is really great. I give huge applause to PSA for this. This is going to change the game when it comes to grading cards through grading companies. Because if PSA starts giving us grader notes, all the others are going to have to. This is why we want competition. This is why, because we need innovation, we need improvement, we need things to continue to get better and cheaper and faster. And that is a really good thing that the leader is about to make a change. The leading company, by a lot, is about to make a change in a really good way. That is outstanding.
This was a question I actually had for you. We've talked about all the product advancements this year. We just talked about the mobile app, things like that. Of all the product developments and updates that are in the pipeline right now, what are you most excited for as we head towards 24?
Yeah, so one of the things we've been working on for a really long time is making our submission experience easier for customers. And I think that the easiest way to do this is have it in the mobile app and use the camera. So the team's been hard at work on a new mobile submission experience where, as a customer, you'll be able to take a photo of a card. We'll tell you exactly what that card is. We'll even have suggested values so that it helps inform what service level to submit under, and then you can add it to your submission. You can, with the click of your camera, you can easily take 3, 4, 5
That's
steps.
awesome.
I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to make grading much more accessible to newer customers, especially. It'll help answer, A, is this worth grading? B, what is this card? So I can even identify it, right?
In a world where there's 9 million parallels of everything.
Yeah. So I think that this is going to be a game changer when we roll this out to customers. The team's hard at work on it right now.
More great news. This is fabulous. Anything we can do to make going through the grading process easier and faster. Instead of having to go in and look and click on the drop-down menu and type in part of the description of the card, especially with modern cards that have a million parallels and things, you can just simply scan the card and the PSA database will recognize what card it is and add it to your submission. That is great. And you could do it directly from the app. That is great. A lot of people have a lot of cards, and it takes a lot of time to look up the name of each one and the year of each one, especially for some oddball things or some parallels or some hyper thises and colored thises, and that's great. And again, when the leader makes an improvement, it's gonna force the others to do it. That's why we need competition. So, as a whole, some great news from PSA, and a couple of things that I don't know if they are super good to hear for collectors and submitters to PSA. But this is progress. There's more communication. There's more information. There's a peek behind the curtain on how things work. There's admitting some things I'm not sure that they wanted to. There's some talking about some things that I think they needed to. And there's some improvement in the process, which is really, really good for us, the collector. Let me know what you think of this. I'll tell you this again and again and again. I am not a PSA guy. I am not an SGC guy. Yes, I have more cards in PSA holders than any other company. Does that mean that I'm biased for PSA? I guess you could say that. But what I'm biased for is all of us collectors. Cheaper, faster, better. That's what I'm biased for. I'm biased for those things. Let me know what you think.